I'm doing good, dude. How are you?
Could be better. I like your setup.
Thank you. I like
What kind of
yours.
mic is that?
It's a Shure SM7B.
Sounds very fancy.
Yeah, it's definitely really nice. It helps out in this room because I film in the garage, so it's not very well sound treated. So it has really good noise rejection, and then when I take it to places, it works out well. But yeah, it's definitely the most expensive piece of gear in my kit, which is different, because most people it's like their camera. Well,
How much was it, if you don't mind me asking?
this is 400, and then the stand was 100. This mic activator was like 150, and then I don't know, this guy.
Yeah.
Well, like another $100. So
Wow, man.
yeah.
Very professional. You know how much my mic cost?
50.
$40, bro.
Nice, you got it on sale.
Yeah, guess so. She's a little bit of that Amazon magic.
Dude, so
Dude,
what?
I just want to say, man, it was good seeing you at the LinkedIn local Boston.
Yeah, but
Unfortunately didn't
I didn't even see you though. Like, I didn't realize.
Loved your speech, the thing that you gave.
You did?
With the dude.
You really thought so?
Man. Yeah, I mean, I was honestly like, dude, like, good on this kid. Like, he's traveling around. He's got the balls. Like, he might as well do it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah,
have you ever joined a Minecraft? Do you have Minecraft installed right now?
Oh shit! Totally forgot about that.
I should have dropped a warning. Okay, so
I think I.
No, let me put it this way. How much time do you have today? Because if you have like less than an hour, I'd say it's not worth it. But if we could chill.
Yeah, I've got to go at 11. So I have 53 minutes.
Okay. Let's just chat, man.
Okay, cool. Minecraft.
We can play Minecraft another time. How about that? I thought it would be cool because especially after learning more about the stuff that you do with VR. But what would be really cool is if we both had VR headsets and then just went into the Minecraft realm, and then that would be more engaging, or like Facebook Live VR and stuff like that.
Dude, let's do that, man. There's yet somebody to do that, but I'm definitely down for it.
So you seem to okay, by the way, we're recording, so this is the podcast. What's up, guys? You're listening to the Zack Scriven podcast, informal start.
What's up, everyone? What's poppin'?
Dude, so your top 5 podcast hosts seemed to stir up some controversy because someone seemed to be upset that there wasn't any girls up there, and so I thought that was a pretty interesting comment. And what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, like, I think if I wrote a like a top 100 people to follow and there weren't any females on there, then that'd be a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
And that'd be a little bit bad. But honestly, I just wrote down the 5 most people that bring me value on LinkedIn. Has nothing to do with their gender. And honestly, to be 100% honest, it pisses me off when people say things like that.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's just like virtue signaling. It's like, hey, I have no constructive anything to give in this post, so I'm gonna like use my opinion in like my gender studies class that I took in college to tell you why you're wrong and why everybody should follow this ideological doctrine. So to me, that's what it means. Like, and I don't think those people are bad. The people that are like, oh, you should put in females or whatever, and like, dude, that's cool. Like, literally my favorite people in life are females. Like, literally most of my best friends, my mom, my sister, the people that I'm most connected with are females. I love them. None of us would be here if it wasn't without them. So to me, it's just kind of stupid, nonsensical talk in terms of that top 5 LinkedIn posts, because it's just like,
it's out of context.
Get out of here. It's crazy.
let me turn my yeah, that is pretty, because I thought that was interesting. It's like, it's not even like you're saying this is the top 5 in the world. You're just saying these are my top 5 favorite. Who else is there? And I don't know, just because she said, well, if 50% of the population is women, then 50% of your top 5. Well, first of all, that's not even possible. It's either 2 or 3. So, second of all, I mean, that's talking about like equality of outcome, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, I love female podcasters like Tima, Ruby Lee.
Yeah, I love her. I love her too.
You know, they have some other good female podcasts. I mean, I don't really listen to a whole lot of podcasts. I listen a little bit of the Humans 2.0, and I like it, man. I like how you just took the very first Canva template for YouTube thumbnail and just made that your thumbnail, and then you started with the Blue Yeti. I think that's really cool that you've grown it to this point and still have yet to invest. I mean, for example, I have like a $400 microphone, and you're like, yeah, I'm just making top 100 podcasts work with the Blue Snowball. So right on, man. That's cool.
Thanks a lot. I mean, I think there's definitely, over this last month, I've definitely taken a look at everything. And, I think audio quality is really important, but I don't think you need to push it like 100% if you're at like a certain stage. For me, it's just really all about the kind of level of content, level of my quality, because I know that those are the things that actually matter. But later on, I recently just redid the whole YouTube thumbnail graphics thing, and it's just like a step by step, seeing getting feedback, changing things up. Eventually, like my end goal is to have like a real life show, kind of like Impact Theory, where there's like a real set and setting.
That would be cool.
People can go on there, and that's going to require a lot more things. But everything starts out with small, consistent actions.
Nice, man. I like it. You're at over like 120 or something right now, and you just started a year ago. The Humans
120
2.0?
what?
120 podcast episodes.
Oh yeah. 121 uploaded today. Nice. And that's the guest interviews. There's also like anywhere from 45 to 60 other episodes that aren't guest interviews, that are a combination of me just talking and then like a mashup of different guests that talk about certain ideas that I think are really important to get across. So overall, like, probably close to 200.
Wow.
I have no idea, to be honest. I got to go back and check that.
So it seemed like when you started it, you kind of started it as like a little marketing engine for your VR, or just to kind of establish yourself as a presence in VR, because you interviewed someone from like a VR company. So was that kind of the thought at first?
Not really. No, not at all. The reason why I started out with those VR people was those are just the people that I had access to, because I run a VR business and I already knew those people. So for me to like reach out to a like New York Times bestselling author and I have like 2 episodes or whatever, it's not really going to work. So like I kind of had to, for like at least the first 10 episodes, kind of work with who I know, who is in my industry. And I really started it just for my own self-development. Maybe a little bit of the marketing and brand stuff, but it was mostly just for me. Like it really just gave me an excuse to get to talk to the most interesting people. And like really the whole recording part is really just like a thing that I can do so I can have leverage to be able to offer that to them. Like in terms of the podcast, like it really did not expect it to be where it was at all. Like it's really like I started it for the most selfish reasons possible.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's not too selfish, because I started mine in the same way, just to focus on doing it for myself first, because I feel like that's going to be something that's I can stick with the longest. It's the one constant in my life is me, right? So if I pick some other fad, it's going to fade away. I'm going to lose it, right? So for me first, my guests second, because I feel like they can get a lot of value talking to me. I mean, it's a mutual exchange of value. I mean, sometimes it's you go up, sometimes you go lower. So sometimes you're like really reaching for that guest, and sometimes like like I'm now talking with you, sometimes you're going with guests that are maybe looking to reach new audiences with your audience. So it's like and you're kind of mentoring them, so you kind of have a good range. You got to have a good range of guests that are above your level, I guess you could say, and below. And then I think that's it's like life, right? You gotta have some mentors, you gotta mentor some people. That's a critical part of the mentoring process. So yeah, I like to do it for myself first and foremost, my guests, and then finally the audience. So what's up, audience? Dude, so what do you? Awesome. Why would you say your podcast has been as successful as it is?
Because I am not trying to like put out a facade. I'm not trying to say I am, Mark Metry, host of the top 100 podcast, Humans 2.0, and I'm better than everyone, and I know how life works, and I, just follow these 5 things to, get your business on or get your life on track or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's of it. I think a big part of it has just been due to my kind of authenticity, like me just kind of admitting that I don't know anything, and I'm going to take a seat here at the round table and try to understand from people that do. And what I've found is that kind of vibe kind of reaches across to my guests. So like a lot of the people, not a lot of them, but some of the people that I interview, they get interviewed all day. And when they get interviewed, they just kind of go in this mode where they just they spit out like these 5-minute sound bites, right?
Yeah.
But what I've found is when I'm really authentic, when I'm really vulnerable, they also do the same thing. And when we both do that, not necessarily both of us, the person listening on the other end kind of understands that this is not a like a an original or like a generic podcast where it's like I'm going to interview this guest and ask him the same 10 things, and I can go to a better podcast like Entrepreneur on Fire or this one where like I can get that same thing but from a much higher quality show. And when you do that, the other person starts to understand you more, starts to understand the guest more, and they start getting an insight on their own lives and how their own mindset, thought processes work. So I think that's part of it. Also, I think another big part of it is the name. Like I think I got really lucky naming it Humans 2.0.
Yeah.
Like I know if I go on my phone on iTunes and I type in like HU, then it already pops up like Humans 2.0 right away.
Wow.
And that name is very I love the name. I love the name so much. It's probably like the number one thing about my podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a variety of things. And I think it's also really tripling down on my efforts, like not posting once a week and really just tripling down.
Okay. So tripling down on efforts, you got a little luck with the name and some search engine optimization, and then just being authentic and not asking the same questions that, everyone else was going to ask. They could go find that information somewhere else. Kind of why it's like, I don't want to start off. So Mark, what is Humans 2.0? It's like you've been asked that a million times, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so like one thing I'd say is this. So like literally everyone has a podcast now, like literally everyone. And I kind of felt the same thing when I started my podcast. And I basically had this, this realization. I was like, all right, dude, right now I'm a 21-year-old. You're a 20-year-old kid. You're making these podcast episodes. You're not necessarily like a 10-year industry titan expert. Why would somebody listen to your podcast over Tim Ferriss or, Gary Vee or any of these people that have previously existing successful brands? So I was like, I need to triple down and provide valuable content from my guests as consistently as possible. So I made my podcast a daily show. Most people don't do that, right? So it was just kind of setting that intention and setting that effort. And ever since I did that, like that's where things really started to take off. And then that's how it got on the top 100 list. So, I mean, it's efforts like that. It's efforts like I've literally been emailing this one dude's publicist for the past 8 months to try to get on this guest. Like there's so much different, there's so many different mechanisms that go behind a podcast, especially a successful podcast that, I don't want anybody to be naive about it, right? Like you kind of have to have this humility of like, hey, I'm Mark Metry, or hey, I'm Zach. Like who the cares about you? Like nobody cares. It's just about like, hey, can you provide consistent daily content where you're actually giving something to somebody? And I don't think you get that unless you have regular, consistent content. But I see way too many people that start these podcasts and they post like once every 2 weeks. And it's just like I get it. Like if you're doing it as a part of like a marketing thing for your business and like you guys sit on like you can afford whatever it is, like that's cool. But it's like if you want to have a popular podcast, you can't be doing that,
Man, that's interesting. So like a little more background about myself, because I want to talk about my story a little bit.
Mhm.
You know, I like a little over, I guess, almost 4 months ago now. It was back in May. I quit like a full-time engineering career. I was already a senior level because I had dropped out of my parents had a business, and so I was working with them at a really young age, doing SCADA, which is supervisory control and data acquisition. So it's like automated processes they really focus in water distribution. That's why I was making the whole tap, you know, when water comes out of your tap, what's behind that system analogy at LinkedIn Local Boston. So, you know, so I got started in that. And then after 2 years of college, I pretty much just dropped out to work for them full time because I was like, well, I can already do all this stuff and make money now.
Yeah.
So with the time value of money, like, why am I going to just put my earning years? So dropped out. And then, you know, continued to work like I had like this arbitrage of like, this is what my value was worth. And like, but I didn't really need to make that much, you know? So I was still making like $15 an hour, but I was doing jobs that, you know, you know, full-time engineer would be doing. So eventually it wasn't long before, you know, I took over that company. My parents divorced. So that was kind of unfortunate, but then I kind of just took over the work and the company at that time, which was a good experience. Kind of really got me to learn though that I don't want to be like a business owner with employees. And so
Nice.
long story short, you know, I met my fiance. We turned out we were having a child, which was like a little bit of a miracle child. So that was really cool. Unexpected, but really, you know, we were like hoping that would happen, right? You know, so it's like we didn't have to do fertility treatment or anything like that. We're just like, you know, if it happens, it happens. If not, you can't say we didn't try. So so yeah, so the baby was on the way, and I was like, all right, well, you know, the business is like this all the time, you know, and it takes a lot of my time. So I went to go get an actual job at an engineering firm that wasn't my parents. And so, you know, I took a bit of a pay cut to do that, and then I built up some rapport, and then after 2 years, I moved to another place, you know, as a senior level, because by this time I had like 10 years of experience. So to leave that job was really hard, man. But then to leave the second job was even harder because I didn't have like another job lined up. I just had this passion for video and like, yeah, this feeling. You know, I really started discovering Gary Vee's content this year, and really just kind of started waking up to the whole movement of content creation. And I kind of saw a void within the industry that I come from, that there's not really a public figure or someone out there really pushing not just the social, but like social with a person and a personality attached to it, you know? Like all these companies, they have social media and stuff, they're putting out videos, but like no one's really on camera. It's just like the product, or you know, someone narrating a thing. So it's like, why not actually have a personality there? So that's what I'm doing. And yeah, man, to leave that job though with, you know, a 1.5-year-old daughter at home, and my fiance was actually out of work at the time. She's a flight attendant, so that's how I'm able to fly everywhere, but she was out of work on an ankle injury. Wondering about that. So we went from like 2 incomes to like 0 incomes for like a month. And then yeah, so I partnered with
when was that?
May. So then in June, that's when I actually got my first full-time client, where they pretty much covered like, I mean, I'm making like half what I was making, but I'm way more happy, and I can always expand, you know, a couple more clients and get back to where I was. But you know, money was never the issue. I really just had
the first client.
So I had actually had I worked with him in the past, and the owner of that company, and they do what I used to do, and he is like a more forward thinking person. So I actually had him on my podcast, and it was like at the beginning of May, and I was like, dude, I'm scared I'm going to quit my job on this podcast. Cause you know, when you start talking about like forward thinking ideas, and you know, here I am in a job that I fucking hate. So it's like, it's kind of like a contradiction to like sit there and be like, yeah, man, you know, follow your passion, but here I am just, you know, not doing the same, right? So
100%.
So I had him on, and I actually had him sponsor it. So he not only sponsored that one episode, but their company sponsored that whole month, and I focused on like automation professionals. And that kind of blew my mind that like what I thought was like a big ask wasn't even a big deal to them. They just like doubled down, and it's like, okay, cool. Like someone actually cares, you know? You know, it was like a few $100s. It wasn't enough to like actually live on, but it was just that concept, you know? And
Something, man.
really, there was more that led up to that, like a lot of daily live streaming on my YouTube channel, a lot of going live on Facebook to this Facebook group for Airbnb hosts. And so that really kind of grew my confidence. I swear, I was like a storyteller and a group personality within that community, getting free products, doing podcasts with, you know, some of the people that have services for that industry and getting that for free. And really just, I'm like, I just kind of had to prove to myself that stuff like this would actually work and people would actually, you know, give a shit. So it was like confidence building the whole way. So
Yeah, for sure.
did I
That's
answer
why
your
I'm
question?
hearing, no, you didn't. But that's that I love hearing people and how they got their first client, because you know
Yeah.
it shows them.
Oh yeah.
You know,
So
you could go from zero to, you know, this thing, right?
yeah.
And
So I had him
changes-
on the podcast, and you know they sponsored it. But then, so after I quit, he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, would you do marketing for us? Provide me a proposal." And then from there, it was I made a proposal, and I actually sent him a video proposal. In the video, I told him exactly what I
Nice.
wanted to do. I said I was going to do content marketing for them, but also I was going to do my podcast, which they were going to continue to be a sponsor of, and that they would also sponsor me in doing my personal, like just traveling, doing whatever it is that I wanted to do. And that, yeah. So they were kind of like just a brand
That's
sponsor.
crazy, man. That's
And so like it wasn't a whole lot of money, but it was enough where it was like more than if they just went to go get like some random marketing company that had no experience, or, you know, so I did something unique really. And, you know, I felt like I gave them some
Really?
pretty good value. You know, I grew my network by going to all these events, and, you know, here I am
Yeah, you
talking
did.
about their company, getting the word out there. So I feel like it has worked out, and we're going to, you know, continue working together. So I'm just been focusing on refining my processes. Like, how do I take a podcast and turn that into micro content to then, you know, promote the podcast, promote my guests, and stuff like that. So
That's awesome.
that's what I'm focusing on now. So yeah, fuck, I forgot why I told you this. Oh yeah, just because it was hard, man. Like I could have easily just stayed in that job, and I feel like 99% of people would have, especially because, you know, they're like, oh, my daughter, I can't do that. But the way I saw it was like, I can't not do that for her, you know? Like I can't let her be the excuse to not follow my dreams, to be unhappy, to then have that feedback into her and her growing up and all
And then
this
she'll
stuff.
just do the same thing.
Yeah, so I'm like, dude, fuck it. Like, what do I have to lose? I could always get another
And here you
job.
are,
So yeah, man, thanks. Thanks for listening to that. So yeah, that's my story. So you must be
Nice.
like single or something, man, right? Or do you have a girlfriend or?
I'm single. No,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
single.
Don't get a girlfriend, dude. I've seen it happen to one of my other content creator friends, and he's still making content, but I definitely feel like it kind of took away a little bit from
Maybe. I don't
his
know.
posting
We're all
frequency.
different.
But yeah. I mean, it's all a balance, right? It's all depending on how you look at it of life,
Integration.
what success is, and what kind of life you want to create for yourself. I mean, really. So yeah, the whole thing I was saying was like, I did a little vlogging, I did a little this and that. I really think the podcast is what I like doing best. And so that's kind of where I'm focusing more of my efforts into. That's why I brought the podcast to LinkedIn Local Boston instead of just like vlogging it. Like I want to actually podcast. And it's an interesting thing, especially with one microphone. Like this is kind of where we can both talk, we can interject and stuff. When you have one microphone and you pass that to the guest, they just start talking, and then at first they don't really know what to do, but then they don't pass it back, and it's actually kind of cool. It creates an interesting dynamic where they just start talking, and they actually get some pretty good word flow. So yeah, it's fun stuff. Yeah. So man,
Yeah.
enough about me. Let's hear more about you, dude. Where'd you get those
You wanna know?
glasses?
Actually, I got these glasses when I went to Egypt 3 years ago.
Nice.
That's where I got.
Is that where you're from, or?
My parents were born there. I was born in the United States, though. But you know, my ethnicity, whatever you want to call it, is Egyptian.
All over okay, cool. So what do you think about the pyramids? Have you been inside? What? Is that a normal question, dude? Like a bucket list thing. Is that like what everyone asks when you say that you come from Egypt?
I've actually never. No, I've never been asked that on a podcast. Like when I was younger and people wanted to make fun of me, like that was like the stereotypical question. But I have been inside the pyramids. The pyramids are awesome. still kind of a freak of nature on how they created them up to this day. And yeah, man, it's really interesting. Like just speaking of that, like sometimes I think like, am I like one of these Egyptian pharaohs like descendants? Like, do I have like some mystical abilities or some shit that I don't even know about? But yeah, I don't know. It was a cool culture. Very interesting for sure.
That's cool. We're yeah, I mean, I'd say for the most part, you're just like a normal person, but you woke up at such an early age so that's unusual for your age. I mean, even for my age, a lot of people are just barely graduating college, just trying to get a job.
50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, some of them are still at that level. It doesn't matter on the age, man.
So yeah, you're right. So it's just like whether you've kind of woke up to this Humans 2.0 world, you know, this new world that we live in. You know, it's kind of like, I like Humans 2.0 because it's kind of like Internet 2.0, Industry 4.0. Like it's the next level iteration of humans. So
yeah,
so I think that's really, you know, you're just a normal person, but you've become more aware than a lot of most people, and maybe you have a little Egyptian superpower.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's you know, I hate to say this, but like when I woke up, I just kind of realized that I was not the only person that was in that kind of boat. And that's where, just like you kind of saw the white space in the market, where I kind of saw a white space in the market. And I was like, hey, I'm a normal dude, right? I've got my own insecurities, fears, doubts, etc., all the things that make me a human being. But I still kind of woke up to this, and being consciously aware of that enables me to live in the present moment and constantly improve my life on a moment to moment basis. So like, for example, I went from somebody that had, like, this is just 2-3 years ago, somebody that had 2 financial assets to having 12, somebody that went from having what I think is the most important thing, somebody that had an internal mindset that was just totally broken, awful, depressed, anxious, to, you know, I wish you could take a look at my mind right now. Like just pure positivity, like the same kind of engine that kept me miserable for most of my life is the same engine that keeps me unbelievably positive and going. And that enables me to live in the present moment, which enables you to actually do this change. Because, you know, Zach, what I've noticed is, at first when I woke up, I was kind of like, wait, why isn't everyone else doing this? Like, why isn't everyone else like starting a business? Why isn't everyone else like truly happy or X, Y, and Z? And I realized that a lot of us are literally running away from our unconscious fears on a moment to moment basis. That comes from our culture, the way that our parents taught us, the way that we treated ourselves when we were kids, all these different things. So like when you talk about starting a business or talk about making proactive change and taking responsibility, the person's like, wait, dude, what are you talking about? I have to deal with like this unconscious fear that I have, and they don't even know that. So to me, it's just like the Humans 2.0 podcast is really a system that I've been creating that's been in a constant feedback loop between myself that helps me get better. And then at the same time, it's also helping tens of thousands of other people get better as well. Like you said at the beginning of this episode, there's 120 guest episode interviews. I'm sure, or 121, excuse me, you're bound to like get one thing out of there if you listen to all of them or whatever it is. So it's just like, this is my attempt to make the world into a place that I want to live in for everyone else, because I realized the transition that I went from human 1.0 to human 2.0, and I'm just trying to spread that as much as possible. And I'm using LinkedIn, I'm using all these other things, and it's definitely paying off for sure. I have no idea what you asked me, but I hope I answered it.
I wait. I don't know if I asked you anything, but now I do want to ask, because I was going to ask, like, why do you think people, it almost seems too easy? And, you know, I kind of had that same, when, we're going to keep using this word, when you wake up, you know, when the veil is removed, you're like, wow, this is like not that, it's really not that difficult, you know? Yeah. Exactly. And so you're like, why aren't more people doing this? Like, I mean, to think 4 months ago, I was stuck in behind a desk in a completely different field, making a lot of money, but completely miserable. it was affecting my health, it was affecting my relationship, and that me, just a normal person, could just quit that, start up something new, and use a little bit of leverage and negotiation to actually get paid to do it, and to get paid to learn, really, to get paid to try something new. I feel like that's not really, that hard.
Yeah, for sure.
But what you're saying is it's people's unconscious fears that they need to get over to, but then they should then use that as a reason to go down that path, is to fight those fears face on.
100%, man. What I've been thinking about this a lot recently. This is what I think it comes down to. Whenever like you think about something and it's like, oh, that's so difficult, that's just your current perspective. And your current perspective is always outdated. It's never updated to the environment. And what you just said about kind of facing your fears is exactly the thing that you need to do. So when I recall back to kind of like getting woke, a lot of that was triggered by all sorts of things. But one of the main things was consciously facing my fears. Because like I came to the realization of the fact that, oh, we're always running away from our unconscious fears. So what's the thing to actually be afraid of? Fear itself. Like you should be afraid of fear itself in a way. And when you do that, then your number one priority becomes to overcome that fear. And what I've noticed is that for every single fear that you overcome, you're like upgrading a new quality of life for yourself, and you're entering a next level. So like once you get over the fear of like talking to people, which is a fear that I had, then I could start a podcast. Once I got over the fear of this, then I could, make X amount of dollars. Once I did this, then I could finally do that. And it's just like, if you understand that, just like literally try to, like, despite all you see is darkness for those that are on the other side, quote unquote, just have the end in mind and just realize that like you've almost got to like, if you're a turtle, you've almost got to like put yourself in that shell and just go for it. Just run like as fast as you can. Just do it. And then open your eyes. You're like, oh shit. Like this is what life is. So it's just like trying to get that point across. And it's like, hey, if you don't defeat this fear, it's literally going to keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And all the regrets, all the things that, you don't like in your life, all those things are going to get worse unless you actually tackle this fear. So that's kind of like been my philosophy. I've talked to a lot of other people and they've all kind of experienced the same thing. And, I think fear overall, plays into our environment right now, because I think technology's always been changing our environment. So a lot of the rules from a cultural, from a societal standpoint don't really apply in today's environments. And a lot of those culture things are what fear is based off of in the first place. And like Seth Godin and I talked about this, but it was basically like a lot of those rules don't even apply anymore. So like, what our brain thinks we should do before we cross that line of being woke is the exact opposite of what we should be doing, because our environment's changed. So I'm trying to get that point across to people, because I think that's really the silver bullet.
Explain that last part again.
Yeah, sure. The part with the environment.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean. So for example, I believe the two biggest fears that human beings have is the fear of death and the fear of social outcast. Fear of social outcast because, rewind 1,000 years ago, the way that our brains grew up is you're in this tribe and, there's another tribe over there, but basically your entire world is your tribe. And basically like everybody knew everything about everyone. And the fear of being socially outcasted from your group meant you would need to live alone, which literally translated to death. Nowadays, you don't really need the group anymore. But certain groups do manifest themselves like, families, different like religious communities, XYZ. Those same kind of fears that say, hey, if we, based on our perception, if we go against this group, if we go against this idea, and a lot of people have that because what they actually want to do in their lives is the exact opposite of what they're grown up in. A lot of people have that, and that's their main fear. Like the reason why they don't quit their job is because throughout their entire life, they heard their dad and this person and say, oh, these men get these kinds of jobs. It's like they have this belief, they have this rule, they have this structural societal norm. And to them, that is literally the same as the fear of death. That's why it's so hard. But once you get around that, then it's good. And the reason why I said the environment's always changing, it's because of technology. Like we don't have villages anymore. There are villages, of course. We have cities. We have social media. We have XYZ. That stuff is changing our environment. So the same rules that our brain plays on to survive based on our environment from thousands of years ago, psychologically, they're still being, acted out on and enabled today, but the rules have totally changed in our world, right? Like if you want to make a lot of money, you need to spread your idea. Spreading your idea, like you need to public speak, just like you did at the LinkedIn Local Boston. Public speaking is like the number one fear of people that they have. So it's kind of like all these things have been flipped on their head in a way. And the ones that do realize that, they're not even smarter. They're not more intelligent. They're not better looking. They don't have more money. I mean, they definitely can be all these things, but it's oftentimes people that just realize it and then they take responsibility for themselves, and then just from that point on just always take consistent present moment action. And that's why they're successful. And all the people that I've talked to on my podcast, people like Seth Godin, billionaire Naveen Jain, this New York Times best, like this like wildly successful dude, they're not smarter, they're not they're not better looking. A lot of the times they have all the same insecurities, doubts, fears that you and I have, but they've just been able to take action despite those thoughts.
Yeah. That's good, man. Dude,
that's the game, bro.
That's kind of why I was drawn to speaking in public, because once I kind of got over the fear of doing video and the fear of going live and the fear of being at networking events, it's like, well, that's the next natural progression, is like to continue to just really almost, it's like kind of like a form of like self torture a little bit. You're like intentionally like, all right, this is going to hurt, but I want to do it because it's going to feel good afterwards. I guess it's just kind of like discipline, which, it's
dude, that right there is the key to life, right? Like you can be somebody that says, happiness is the purpose of life. And for some people that misunderstand that, to them, it might be like waking up at noon and like eating Cheetos in bed and not doing anything productive and like binge watching TV and doing X, Y, and Z things that will make you momentarily happy. But what I've discovered, and you kind of touched on this, it's really stepping on those hot coals, right? It's really doing things like, what in the morning when I do my, my 20-minute mindfulness meditation practice, there's a lot of times when I don't want to do that because it's like stepping on hot coals sometimes. But I know it's a exponential, cumulative skill that I'm going to use for the rest of my life and expand on everything else that I want to do. Same thing with exercise, same thing with eating healthy, same thing with, deciding whether you're going to record this video or, do nothing or whatever it is. It's the same thing, for sure.
Okay. So just look at it like that, but on a micro level. Like, what am I not doing right now that I could be? Or because I kind of have a problem with like procrastination, and also like I have a little bit of a problem too with moderation. So like for me, it's like sugar and sweets. I'll eat once I start eating ice cream, like I'll eat like 2 bowls. Like I don't really stop myself, and I feel like, I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like, what's up?
So
it's like instant gratification, right? Like that's where I don't know, craving that, and then I just can engorge myself.
Maybe. I think there's a lot of complexity, and I don't know you that well to be able to say like, oh, this, and that. From my understanding, procrastination doesn't come from like wanting to put something off at the last moment. It comes from like an abundance of stress. So I've definitely felt it at times, but once I kind of put in good habits, good routines in my 24 hours, like meditation, like exercise, like eating healthy, and like I sorted out the real stuff in my life, then the stress kind of went away, even though I'm doing like many more things. Mm-hmm. And in terms of what you said about sugar and that kind of stuff, so this is really
alcohol.
interesting. alcohol, sure. So this is what I've learned. This was the case for me maybe like a year ago. I would eat a lot of sugar because my body would need the energy in order to be anxious and stressed out later. It knew, like, my subconscious body had a circuit in it that was like, oh, Mark, at this time or when you do this, you're going to be really anxious, you're going to be really nervous, you're going to be really stressed. That actually requires a lot of energy from your body. So your mind and body are kind of like subconsciously conspiring together to say, hey, Zach's going to be really stressed out because that's what he's decided to do. In order to meet that demand and make it seem more like a walk in the park, we're going to load him up on sugar and, like, I don't know, maybe alcohol in order to be able to have that level of stress, in order to have that level of things.
Mm-hmm.
For me, dude, it's all about for me, it's never about like abstaining from something. Like, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of habits that I don't want to be doing. But to me, what I figured out is like the main thing is just to replace them with good habits, right? So like, it's not necessarily about not eating sugar or not eating processed foods or not eating whatever. It's about eating more vegetables. It's about eating more healthy things. And like, once you kind of you have that in your mind with every single aspect, things get a lot easier. Remember, we said at the beginning of this conversation in terms of, you know, our fears and how we perceive things as difficult as easy. It's really that, you know? And I think that has to do with another really important concept, which I think is the most important concept. And it's the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? It's like I say, like, hey, I'm Mark Metry. I have a problem with X, Y. Yeah, that's going to be my problem.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and then you'll find more of that problem. What would you ask Joe Rogan on his podcast? If you had him on your podcast or you were on his podcast?
Holy shit, man. I don't know. Joe Rogan is like one of the main reasons why I started my podcast. That's a big question. I would probably ask him. I don't know, man. It would definitely be something along the lines of like some really weird shit, like aliens, him taking like DMT, him like just thinking of what life is, like how he's tripped out. Like, I don't know. I just what would you ask him?
Well,
I wouldn't actually want to ask him anything. I just want to have a conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be on the podcast. Let me ask you this. Would you rather, if you had to choose one, have him on your podcast or you be on his podcast?
Dude, come on. You know the answer. I would 100% go on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That was a dumb question. I figured that would be the case. But
he's definitely going to come on my podcast.
Maybe one day it'll be like Joe wants to be on Mark's podcast, and
100%, dude. No doubts.
That
really wasn't a joke, by the way. Just letting you know.
Do you think him smoking weed affects his life or his podcast in negative, or do you think that's kind of become who he is and kind of why he has some views that are different than the societal norm? You know what I'm saying, or is that just kind of independent?
Yeah.
Do you smoke weed, or have you ever?
I have no idea, because I think somebody's complexity is just too much. But I have seen a lot of people, though, that like are in a very public space like Joe Rogan, and then their ideas become them, and they take pride in like, oh, this thing, and then they get really upset. But one thing that I do like about Joe Rogan is that he is very intellectually honest, and he's very intellectually humble. So if he's wrong, he'll admit it. And if he has no idea what he's talking about, he'll admit it. That's very rare, because a lot of people in this kind of space get caught up in their ego, and they're like, hey, if I said this a year ago, then that means I still have to be that way. But it's like, that's not how life is, man. Like, it's not black and white. And Joe Rogan definitely gets that across very well. I'm a big fan of him.
I'd want to do a saltwater float tank. Actually, I think that'd be really good, like kind of therapy session.
There's actually at Boston, there's one right by the place that it was held at. So we should definitely, if it's also at the same spot and you end up going, we should definitely all go after or before or whatever.
It's actually at a different Industrious. I think it's more in the downtown near the harbor. But yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, next September is a little busy.
Are you going to that?
I don't know. There's also I got invited to that Drift.
Wait, where do you live?
California.
Oh, did you totally go to Drift? I'm going to Drift next Tuesday, or this Tuesday.
Okay, so it's next week, right? And my friend also, who I've never met, but I've done a couple podcasts with him. He's from the East Coast. He's also going there, so it'd be kind of cool to meet him and you and
dude. There's so many
John
people gone, man.
Hansitz.
Who?
John, the guy who was the host of LinkedIn Local Boston. He was the one who hooked me up with the ticket.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He hit me up with the ticket too. I was so lucky. And then somebody else gave me a VIP ticket, which I'm super pumped about.
Wow, dude, those things are like $3,000 or something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I would no way in a shot pay for those if I didn't get those for free. No way. Not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what I can do. That'd be fun. But if not, maybe another time. Maybe when you're in LA to be on the Joe Rogan podcast, you can swing by my studio. And
is that where you're at?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm like 30 mile. I mean, yeah, I can get to LA in like 40 minutes or something. You know.
Dude, I'll let you know, man. I'll let you know. Hopefully in like a couple years or something.
Right on.
That'd be shit crazy.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with right now is I don't even know if it's struggling is the right word, but so I smoke weed and it's kind of become a big part of who I am. Like not, and it's weird because I almost have like this split personality where I don't talk about that a lot on camera. In fact, I like try to hide that about me, but it's weird because it's like, if that's who I am, then why am I trying to hide that? And so I feel like I've almost created this internal conflict where in some senses I'm like, should I quit? Should I hide this about? And like, or should I just be open about it like Joe does? I mean, you know, there's some things that are cool about that, or I don't know. What would you say about that? Like you're saying this is society talking in my head and just do what I want? Or am I nerfing myself by smoking weed?
I mean, just like we said, man, like our environment's changing. Like, and our environment's going from like you're taking this plant that just naturally grows. Society says it's illegal, kind of like.
Well, it's actually legal in California for recreation now, but
and it's legal in Massachusetts too now. So so like it's kind of like this back and forth like culture society backlash. But I don't know, man. Like I would just I've had this conversation before, and it's like I feel like a lot of us are really quick to say like, oh, I have this problem and like this is the reason for it. You know, but I think in reality, like we have no idea. Like, I don't know your situation. I don't know the thoughts that go on in your head and stuff, but it's like, just look at it from a perspective of like your future self, maybe like your family, your business. I don't know. And like, I wouldn't necessarily look at other people and say like, oh, this podcast smokes this and this podcast doesn't. And like, whatever. I just think you need to kind of like observe yourself and really see if it's, if it is a problem. Maybe the sugar, maybe the alcohol is a problem. Maybe you're the problem. Maybe you need to do this. Maybe you need to do that. All I'd say is just like keep an open mind and don't be attached to like an idea. Like I think that's really the main thing. So many of us become like associated with like this idea and it becomes our religion. And then if we go against that, our identity like totally flips. I know that's something I definitely struggled with, but it's like, not defining yourself, not labeling yourself as anything is actually, I think, a good thing because it enables you to do a lot of different things. The co-founder of Wired Magazine, Kevin Kelly, he says, do not premature optimize. So it's
you don't know what to optimize for.
Right. And you don't know what the future lies ahead for yourself. So I would just maybe keep an open mind, maybe talk to people that are a little bit more knowledgeable than me about it. Maybe people that I try to email Joe Rogan. I don't know.
I'll just we'll talk about it over a joint on Joe Rogan podcast.
So
I think the thing is, it's like I realize that it's well, at least what I think is like it's not that bad, but it's like if I stop smoking, then I just start drinking more. If I stop drinking, then I'll start eating sugar. So it's like that in a lot of ways that's like the least harmful thing. So and the only thing that does hurt me is if I do get high, then I can't make a video unless people know that I'm high, and typically that's not been the case. Like especially on LinkedIn. I mean, I've been a little
Well,
bit.
don't
I mean,
you
like
when you smoke?
my on camera, I come off different. You could tell I'm high. You know, like my voice is different. My eyes are bloodshot. You know, so when I get high, I can't make a video like I normally would be able to. So that's been an easy solution. I just make the video first, and smoke in the evening or whatever, right? Um, I also have like, yeah, I know you said don't put a label on it, but like for lack of a better label, like I kind of have this autism spectrum thing, like kind of like Asperger's is what my symptoms most identify with. And so I feel like that I've kind of used marijuana as a way of just kind of coping with that. Like it kind of helps me calm down, relax, like actually be able to think about something and not have my brain go 1,000 miles per hour. So I don't know.
You know what I think it is? Have you ever played Pokemon?
Yeah.
You know when like you're in the middle of the game and you're like running around the field and you try to like activate your fishing rod or something, and then a reminder from Professor Oak comes up and he's like, "Hey, Ash, there's a right place and a right time to do this." And it's kind of like that same thing. Like I think it's like I the way that I view life, or the things in life is tools. Meditation's a tool. Smoking, I don't know, maybe it's a tool. Running's a tool. This is a tool. This is a tool. But it's like if I'm in the middle of like church and I put on my running shoes and I go for a run, running is very good for you. You could debate whether church is or not, but it's like doing that activity there just doesn't do it. But what you said about if it's not weed, it's alcohol. If it's not that, it's that. That's something that's really interesting. I would definitely dig deeper into that.
Okay. It's like my body like craves like it's like when I if I run, let's say I run out, then I'm like, all right, well, do I have like beer? Or then if I don't have that. So thanks for talking about this, man. It really helps because I have been struggling with it. So I'm like, well, why not just talk about it? Because I feel like it might help and maybe help other people that are in a similar
100%.
position.
You're doing the right thing.
I think you said something good. I should focus on not cutting out the bad things, but just adding more good things, and naturally the bad things will kind of go out. And so like if I know if I focus on like meditation and working out a little bit more, I mean, one, I'm going to need to do that eventually or I'm going to die. So I should start focusing on that. And I think maybe that'll help just kind of balance my life out a little bit better,
Yeah. Dude, one thing that I'll tell you is like this. So like if your base isn't 100% and you know that and you're doing like dope ass shit on LinkedIn like you are,
imagine if I was 100%.
Your mind, yeah, no, like I'm saying like your mind, whether it's like just a pattern habit that you've had of like, oh, I've got to smoke or I've got to drink or whatever it is, your brain and your body will kind of realize that. So what I mean is kind of like this, right? If like I've talked to so many different psychotherapists about this, but the concept of saying, okay, I will not do this thing, it does not work. It simply does not work in the human mind.
Yeah.
So like, and this is what I would say. You may or may not trying to get high. You may or may not trying to get drunk or buzzed or get the sugar high, which is I think is the most dangerous drug. If you're trying to do that, your body's trying to improve its current state. But here's the thing, it's probably trying to do that because there is something in your state that is not already at that level. So like what I mean by that is like if you don't have a base body of sleeping really well, of eating healthy foods that your body like literally has been adapted to eat and do, you are going to seek that sugar. You are going to seek that drug or whatever it is to try to help yourself feel better. But like, dude, if I've learned anything, the best drugs in life are free. The best ones are free. Sleeping, exercising, eating healthy, meditating, walking,
sex,
being grateful, sex. All those are
yeah.
much better than like any kind of substance. But then again, I haven't like tried DMT or anything. So like we could come back in this podcast in a few years and I'll let you know. But yeah.
It's
a really interesting subject, man.
I'd never done DMT, although I would like to have that experience. I don't know, it's a little hard now with having a family and a daughter and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
I did do my fair share. I was kind of a little psychonaut in college and stuff, so I did my fair share of the psychedelics. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe that's why I'm kind of screwed up. But yeah, I think that helps, man. I should focus on working out. And you're right, just
Nah,
saying I'm
man.
not going to do
Nah.
X, Y, or Z, then that's not going to work. But I should say, hey, let me focus on improving other areas of my life, and then let the other parts kind of just work themselves out. Dude, what do you?
Yeah, man, for sure. And I think, like, dude, like, listen, I have to go like right now. But
Yeah,
like, what is this? So just like in the same way that people have addictions of, um, I'm not saying you do drugs, alcohol, like these things. A lot of us, and I'd say most people, have the addiction of thinking about their own thoughts. It's like a lot of us will like sit here and like try to think and say like, oh, this and that, and like this is the reason and that. Just like kind of we talked about, reality is thinking never creates clarity, only action does. That's the only thing that creates clarity in our lives. um, but yeah, dude, Zach, I've got to run like right
thanks, man.
now.
Appreciate it.
Dude, this is fantastic, man. Let me know how I can help you out, and I'll catch you soon, my friend. Take care.
See you later, Mark. Peace out. That was Mark Metry, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Zack Scriven podcast. Hope you guys don't like me any less, being fully authentic, being fully transparent. Mark, thank you again for being on the podcast. I felt like we had a really good conversation. Went a little bit different way than I had expected, but I just that's how I take things. I take things naturally and as how they go. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave me a review on iTunes if you guys like this podcast. Doesn't have to be 5-star. If you don't think it deserves 5 stars, that's cool. But yeah, I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you guys in the next podcast. Peace out.